Alrighty, out in the remote shed, we have a classic and vintage Stihl FS85 string trimmer. And the customer complaint, which is myself, is that the machine doesn't run much past off choke. So it needs just about full choke for the thing to run. So I acquired this machine a very long time ago, and I think it had carburetor problems when I acquired it. So what I did is I probably went on eBay and got a Chinese carburetor, because it doesn't have any adjustments on it other than a idle mixture rate. So it's been on here for couple of years. It's acting up again. I already tinkered with it, and I just decided to just get another carburetor for it. So we need to take some covers off so we can get to the carburetor. So first thing we'll do is we'll start taking some bits apart. And yeah, there's probably going to be train traffic and all that other crap, because I live right next to the train tracks. So we take the air filter off, and we're going ahead and we're going to take this plastic cover off. So it's only held on with some of the famous classic Stihl Torx 27 hex bolts, or steel bolts, or whatever you want to call them. So there's one in the front, and then one in the back for the cover / recoil, but the recoil might have to come off too. So there's just some screws and some bolts to take off. And the cover should just slide off. So just 2 bolts you need to take off. One in the front, one in the back. So now we have better access to the carburetor. So now we need a 8mm either a socket or a nut driver or whatever you got that's 8mm. We'll go ahead and take the nuts off so we can gain access to the carburetor. Because a couple of weeks ago I was working on this particular machine. I needed to put all brand new fuel lines and tank grommets into this thing, because this machine's probably about 25 years old. So all the rubbers are all shot. So we got the air box. We'll take that off, and then we got a kind of like a gasketed, I don't know what you would call it, an air intake part, heat isolator, whatever you want to call this thing. And now we're right to the carburetor. So this is a unique kind of carburetor. It's a cheap Chinese carburetor. It has no adjustments on it whatsoever. It's pre-metered, and usually these things are a nightmare to start with, because of all the ethanol crap that we use and all that other shit. So we're going to take the fuel cap off here so we can get rid of any pressure that might have built up, because it is currently 90 degrees outside. So we'll probably got some very volatile fuel here. So we'll go ahead and we got 2 fuel lines on the carburetor here. One is for the intake, and the lower one is your intake. And it would be the front grommet if it's facing the string head. And then we got the purge bulb waste line, you would so call it. So we'll just take these lines off, and we'll make a little mental note that the front one is for the main carburetor, and the back one is for the purge bulb. So sometimes these fuel lines can be a little tricky to get off. And just one of those situations where I got tools scattered everywhere. I never put them away. They just get thrown in a pile. So since these are brand new fuel lines, they've already adapted to their new home. So we'll just work them off gently so we don't destroy them. And of course, if you're working on your machine for the first time, be a good time to inspect your lines because they do dry out and crack, especially in the fuel tank. So if you notice that you got, you run out of power as you're working your yard out and you got half a tank of fuel and it seems like it ran out of gas, most likely you got a fuel line problem. Probably a little pinhole or crack. So the fuel lines are off. And now the throttle cable here, it's just one of them kind of like a bulbous piece of lead on a piece of cable. And that's all you got to do is just advance the throttle with your hands and just pull the cable off and it slips right off. And then you just got to pull the carburetor off. It's studs. So if the throttle cable goes into here. There's a slotted port, and one side has a wider opening than the other. So you insert the lead part into this part, and it goes that way. So when you're pulling the carburetor, your throttle, you can just it pulls with it, so it doesn't detach. So for a new carburetor, I believe when these things were new, they came with a Zama. You can go ahead and buy a new Zama and stuff like that. Of course, you're going to have to do some cross-referencing and stuff like that. But I went back to the Jungle site and I bought a whole another made in China Pride carburetor kit, and it comes with a bunch of stuff. So you get a brand new pre-filter and air filter in the kit. You get a brand new fuel cap with tether, so that'll be going on because this one is kind of compromised. And then you get new fuel line. Of course, we won't be using this today because I've already put new fuel line in it. So we'll just put it off to the side, and then you get new gaskets just in case you rip yours. So for me, there will be spares. And then also in the kit, you get a spare primer bulb or a purge bulb. No such thing as a primer bulb on 2-cycle stuff. So this is a purge bulb. Got a spare purge bulb. Got a spare fuel filter. It's already a brand new fuel filter in the tank when I changed the lines in the gasket. Fuel tank grommets. Get a brand new spark plug. So this is a, what is this? A Savior or Savior. It's a wannabe NGK BPM 7E. So we'll put that off to the side because we don't need that. And then we have the main prize, the brand new carburetor with full adjustments for your high and low, which is very preferred, unlike the other one, which has no adjustments whatsoever. So this is the old one, and here's the new one. And all it is simply putting it all back together in the reverse order that you took it off. So we'll go ahead and slip the carburetor on, or carbonator as some people say it, or fuel make it happener. So we'll slip that on. We'll take the throttle cable here and we'll orient the larger hole toward the bottom. And then we'll go ahead and advance the throttle, and you'll have to thread the needle here in simpler terms. making sure that you have your throttle cable secured, and you want to make sure that it's in the groove here. There's a throttle guide up here. It's plastic, so just make sure your throttle cable is in there, and that's all fine and dandy. And we'll go ahead and we'll put our fuel lines in. So the front one is for the main intake, so we'll just slip that on there. And then the second one was the purge line. So that's all fine and dandy. So that's back on. And now we'll just go ahead and put the gaskets. And if you need new gaskets, you got them. You can put them on it. But if they came off clean, you didn't rip them, go ahead and reuse them. Not a problem. And these things have they got a direction of which is the top and which is the bottom. So we'll go ahead and put that back on. And then the air box. And the choke level lever faces you or toward the back of the machine. Just make sure that the gasket is still there. It is. And then the sometimes tricky part is getting these little nuts started, because these studs do float a little bit. So if you got small fingers, if you can catch a thread, that's all fine and dandy. Sometimes you don't catch the thread, and you have to fidget and fumble with it. But once you get it started, then you can take your nut driver so we got that started. So we'll just very lightly snug it, and we'll get the second one started. And drop it on the floor. Being out in the remote here, you got to make sure you listen to where it fell, because otherwise it'll have a tendency to fall into the abyss. You'll never find it again. And just tighten these up evenly on both sides. Do a couple of turns on each side, get them nice and snug. You'll start feeling the resistance, and then you can just give a little Scotty Kilmer. Okay, that's that. Now we'll just put the filter and pre-filter back on, wherever I put them. They're in the other outside air box. So on some of these filters, some of them, if it's a genuine Stihl, it'll have a little burned lettering on there that says which side is the inside, but the China Pride one doesn't have it. So either way, it goes in. So we're going to use the original Stihl equipment because it's still in good shape. We'll keep the China Pride in for a backup. So we'll put the main filter on, and your pre-filter goes in the box. It just sort of hangs out in there, and you can find a home for it. And the bottom of the air box has a hook on it, and then the latch on top. Just hook the bottom latch on and just push it on. So like I mentioned, I'm going to be replacing the fuel cap because the tether has a tendency to come undone, and it's seen better days because it's over 25 years old. So we'll put the new one on, and that part just gets slammed in the tank, and like such. Put the fuel cap back on. And now it's a good time to test your purge bulb. So we'll just start squeezing it. And we already have fuel coming in. So that's good. It's got a nice return. Primary purge bulb returns very nicely, so it's working wonderfully. So all we got to do is just put the outside blower case on here, or outside case. Just put that back on the reverse order that you put it back on, or took it off, I should say. Put the Torx bolts back in. There's one in the front and one in the back. Of course, it's plastic, so you can manhandle a little bit until you get the threads started. Now we get the one in the front. And then we can go ahead and tighten them up. And we'll just snug them up nice so they don't vibrate loose. And now we got a brand new carburetor on. And the best thing is that it's back to stock. The stock looks where I got the adjustments. Because out of the factory, whatever amount of years ago, you had your adjustments for your high and your low. So if you need be, we can tweak it if it runs horribly. So now it's all a matter of fact of seeing if it works. So let's, we've already purged it. So I'll move you over here, zoom you out, get you refocused out here. It probably won't matter. Okay. We'll see if the old girl runs. So to start this, what's nice about Stihl equipment is that it's got a semi-throttle lock out here. So if you are starting this, you squeeze the trigger and pull the switch to the start position and then let go of the trigger, and that'll give you some throttle. So I'll make sure that I don't send the hedge trimmer head through my laundry out here. And then we'll go ahead and give it a couple of yanks. So the choke, turn the choke on, it's all the way up, and then we just start ripping. Runs beautifully. So if it runs decent when you first start it on cold and it starts degrading a little bit, that's probably, it might happen. The perfect method to do is to let this warm up for about 5 minutes and then go ahead and do your adjustments on your carburetor, your low and your high. And first you want to do is, it don't really matter which way you go. You can start at your low, and what you want to do is adjust it so you get that happy medium. So if you rich in it and it starts to chug a little bit, then you know you're rich. And then if you start going the other way and you lean it out and it starts speeding it up, you want to back it off and and find that happy medium in the center of that threshold. So usually with two-cycle equipment, you want to leave it on just a little touch on the rich side. Same thing on your high side. Find that happy medium, where you lean it out, it starts to scream a little bit and starts to, fall on its face. Then start backing it off. Back it off until it starts chugging on the rich side. And then find that happy medium and just give it a little tweak to the rich side. And your equipment will last forever. Because this old girl has been around for 25 years, maybe even longer, and it's still running. And I have two of these things. And this one, like I said, it had a carburetor issue, so it was tossed out. So I put a cheap Chinese carburetor in it. It lasted, I don't know how many years. But it finally went bad, probably because of the ethanol crap that I used to run. But I don't run ethanol in any of this stuff anymore. Doesn't pay, because it just eats everything and destroys everything. Destroys carburetors, like this one. It's destroyed from ethanol. It doesn't run. There's another carburetor off what we just took off. That probably the ethanol destroyed it, or it just Chinaed out. And then I have another carburetor here that I took off something. It's an original Zama. It's actually a Stihl for something. I don't know what it was for, but it's garbage. So don't run ethanol fuel in your two-cycle equipment. And just for a little tip is, I know that Stihl oil is notorious for plugging up your spark arresters and stuff like that. Thin it out a little bit, people. You don't need that. You don't need that 50-to-1 all the time in your equipment. It's all the oils made today are awesome. The biggest issue is that we run so much oil in these things, it don't need it. Thin it out a little bit. Not a lot, but just thin it out. Or, you go to the aftermarket and you run the good stuff, the AMSOIL. This is the True Stroke Synthetic Sabre Professional two-cycle oil. And it gives you the options of, if you're a diehard and you just are just dead set of running 32-to-1 or 40-to-1 or 50-to-1, yeah, you can run that. It's fine. But I've switched. I run 100-to-1 in all this stuff. And it's just as good because this oil is so good. You don't need to run 50-to-1. And the benefit of that is that, one, it's going to run cleaner. Two, it's going to run your exhaust hotter, so it burns all that carbon off, burns all that unburnt oil off. It keeps all your rings clean, keeps all your crankcase clean, keeps your, if you have a 4-mix where, all that stuff's going through the intake valves, keeps all that clean, and it's just excellent stuff. I mean, I've run Sabre oil for years now, and all this vintage equipment. I mean, this is vintage. I got an old home light. That's probably about 30 to 40 years old. I got this old girl. This thing's about 20 to 25 years old. This Stihl HS81T Stihl hedge trimmers, 30-inch. Still running. Still running on modern oil. 100-to-1, people. 101. I mean, yeah, when this stuff was brand new, yeah, it did run on 50-to-1 because that's all that was available. I mean, even something... I mean, yeah, I got even Husqvarna. The 125 BV here. It runs 100-to-1. So, that's it. Hope you learned something. Make sure you click the like and the subscribe and the thumbs up and comments you know, give me a comment how I did it wrong and I don't know what the hell I'm doing and I talk bullshit. So thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.